Welcome to SkyART. I'm Ellen, and we are doing these online tutorials because we can't be in the center right now. So welcome, and we are doing today one on coil pots, and we're going to be using clay. And I'm going to take you through a couple different techniques to make the coils. So what I'm going to start with is just this large piece of clay, and I'm going to cut it with what's known as a wire tool, and that just cuts the clay right off rather than using a knife, because a knife can get stuck because the clay is so wet. And what I'm going to do first is I'm going to create a slab, which is just a flat piece of clay, and that's going to be the base for our coil pot. Again, if you're just joining us, welcome. This is SkyART. I'm Ellen, and we are creating a coil pot today. What I'm doing right now is I'm just wedging the clay to soften it up. And I'm going to roll it into a ball or a sphere to start off. And then I'm just going to do simple pressing. And I flip it over. Also, if you notice, I'm using a canvas, and that way the clay won't stick to it. So I can easily turn it over. It does pick up the texture of the canvas, but that's totally fine. We can smooth that out later. I'm also right now going to introduce a rolling pin to flatten it out a little more. But each time I do turn it over so that the rolling pin won't stick, because the water from the clay is now getting into the rolling pin. So it's a good idea to keep flipping it as you do this. Another technique that you can do is to simply pick it up and to kind of throw it, turning it different sides to keep the roundness. And it gets a little thinner on the edges with this, so I like to go back and use the rolling pin again. I'm now going to use a needle tool, or sometimes called a pin tool. This tool is used for a lot of different things within working with clay. One thing right now is I'm going to use it to cut, and I'm going to cut kind of an oval shape. And again, I could use something as a template that's round or oval to go around, but I'm just going to do it freehand for today's purposes. I'm going to take off that excess clay. Just going to use a sponge. Keep the edges from being too rough. I may need to take my pin tool back again. Just cut off this little bit. There we go. Okay, I'm just going to push that to the side right here. And when it comes time to add on, I'll go back to the slab. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get back to that large hunk of clay, my wire tool, go off a nice big piece there. I'm going to make sure that there are things out of the way. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by taking this piece of clay and just creating kind of a log with it. There we go. Kind of twisting it a bit. There we go. And my hands, when I do this, I'm not going all the way on my palms. I'm going about halfway to my palms and my fingers, doing a light touch, not pressing down too much, but also I'm going to go the length of the coil as well as back and forth. Here we go. So my hands travel apart. And if it gets to be too much, I'm just going to cut it in half with my needle tool. Gives me two. things too is that if it gets to be too long or too thin, you want to be really careful. Try to thin this out a bit here. I want it to be about the thickness of my finger. Okay, I'm going to set that aside. I'm going to do another one. Once again, I'm going to twist this to start. Help keep it rolling well. Back and forth. And again, I'm not pressing down too terribly hard. I can also have my hands go to the opposite ends. If I stay in one place though, what can happen is that it will get too thin, and that's really hard to get it to go back. Alright, so I'm going to start just with the first two coils. And what I'm going to do first is now I'm going to use what's called a rib tool. This has a serrated edge. A rib can be used for smoothing. The serrated edge though creates grooves on the clay, and this is really important for when you're attaching two pieces together. And then I'm going to add a little bit of water, almost act like a glue. I like to refer to it as Velcro. It's a pretty big piece. I'm going to cut some of the edges off. What I like to do is I also like to use the serrated rib on the coil itself. I just kind of feel it acts like Velcro, two sides sticking together. And then I'm going to put it right on the outside. And to have two pieces come together, what I'm going to do is I'm going to that in half. And I'm actually going to use the pin tool now to create those same type of grooves and to push these two together. Now, that first part is great, but now we need to make sure that it's attached on the inside. You can use your finger for this, or you can use a wooden modeling tool. And the tools, I have two here. The back of the tool is curved, and that acts kind of like the finger in that it presses the clay. I'm actually melding the sides here of the coils into the base, and that's important as this is the bottom coil, and for anything that comes on top, this has to be structurally sound. And so I'm just blending the two together so as not to, I'm covering up that seam that's there. And my outside, the hand on the outside is helping so that it doesn't lose its shape. And the sponge to go in and to smooth it. And that'll help take away those ridges. And now I'm going to put another one on top. So once again, I have to use that serrated rib right around the edges there. And on my new coil, once again, the length of that, a little bit of water. Actually, I'll do a little bit of water on both. If you feel that your coils are starting to crack a little bit, you can add a little water. Got a little hair in there. Once again, I'm going to cut this and have this meet up here. The proper technique for this is called scoring, when you are scratching the surface of the clay. And once again, I'm going to take the wooden modeling tool, and I'm actually now going to blend both coils together. Top to bottom, kind of side to side. So I'm not going to keep building because of our time. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually build some decorative coils to show you how to do that. Going to cut this one again as it's getting just a little bit too big because I don't need this coil to be as long as the one there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually create a spiral. Once again, I'm looking for that thickness of my thumb. If you're just joining us, welcome. SkyART. We are doing an online tutorial about coil pots. We're using just a couple different techniques here. We've created a slab for our base, and now we've created coils for the walls. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a spiral with this coil. Pretty large one. And again, I'm not going to need all of this. I don't want it to be too big, so I'm going to cut it off about right here. What I like to do is I like to give it a little tap to flatten out the bottom. So I'm going to use the serrated rib again. And I'm going to use the serrated rib here as we attach it. There we go. And I'm going to blend the sides. Blend right here, blend that in so that it stays. I'm going to blend it on the outside there a little bit. Okay. And I'm just going to move this up here. I'm going to roll this out a little more for some different coils. I'm actually going to do now kind of like a maybe like a zigzag coil. And as you can see, my coil is starting to crack a little, so I'm just going to dab a little water on. Smooth that out. And once again, everything sits, I put on. There we go. Voila. I'm going to go back in with my tool just to smooth it in. I'm sorry, I'll use the word blend it into that top coil. And on the inside, didn't quite get that coil. Blend it in there so that it stays even more. So we don't want it falling off. We want it to be sound. So there we go. There are three types of coils in building a coil pot that you can utilize.